Hi there, NFI Hammer here. Today I'm going to talk about 10 tips to play your first game of 10th edition of Warhammer 40k. So if you're like me and you're a complete beginner, you've never played Warhammer before, you maybe never played any tabletop before like myself, it's very overwhelming and it's very intimidating, but you got that itch that you want to go out there and you want to play your first game. So I did that last weekend and I watched dozens and dozens of YouTube videos from experts that have been playing tabletop games for decades, and I thought I knew everything that I needed to know going into it, but as a beginner there was some things that they weren't preparing me for. I think when you've done something so often, it's easy to kind of forget what it's truly like for beginners, so I thought I'd share these 10 tips for 10th edition from a beginner's perspective of things that I wish I had known before I played my first game. So tip number 1 is physical over digital. So what I mean by this is, you might have your laptop or a phone with all the data cards and stratagems on there, print them out before you do it. If you can't print them because you don't have access to a printer or you can't borrow your work printer, definitely recommend just writing it down on a piece of paper. Write down all the, weapon strength, attack values, what war gear your units have. It's so much easier to just refer to something printed in front of you, and it gives it kind of that tangible, quality to it that digital doesn't have. Plus your opponent can also have a look and see. It's really hard when they've got a phone and they're saying, oh, I'm attacking you with a D6, and you're like, how does that work? What weapon are you using? Whereas if they can actually just show you a piece of paper, it definitely makes a big difference. There's a really good YouTube channel called +1 to hit, and they've uploaded these really good printable guides. I'll leave a comment in the description down below, but check that out if you haven't seen that. Number 2 is before the game, familiarize yourself with all the terrain, all the objectives, what sort of enemy units are going to be there, what do your units do. And so the way I did that is I created a video where I went through each of the units that was in my opponent's army and the units in my army. You can go check that out. For me, it was more of a tool for me to learn what to expect and what abilities I was going to uncover or use myself. It didn't help me in the end because I lost, but definitely recommend, familiarizing yourself ahead of time, if possible, about what units you're going to expect to see. Tip number 3, no matter how long you think it's going to take, double it and then double it again. So we were playing a very small 500 point army, and we thought maybe it would be a couple of hours tops. And although that we hadn't played any tabletops before, we'd played heaps of board games, so we thought, we're going to knock this out of the park. Actually, it ended up taking us about 3 hours and 20 minutes from start to finish. We were going really slow with, making sure that each rule that we were doing was accurate, and, we were referring back to the rule book all the time, and we're also a bit indecisive about what we were going to do, so, it's probably not going to take everyone that amount of time if you're just YOLOing it, but yeah, it's definitely worth allowing more time than you originally thought, just so that you're not rushed and you don't have to, end things early. That connects to tip number 4, which is start small. We did a 500 point army, and that was fine. I'd actually even recommend just 1 unit versus 1 unit, just to practice rolling and how that all works with the roll to hit, and then roll to wound, and then saving throws like feel no pain. There's a lot of just core mechanics that, take a bit of time to learn, and so doing that in a much smaller scale is going to really help, whereas when you've got, 10 different units, it's going to be very overwhelming just to kind of learn the fundamentals. Another tip that's kind of a sub-tip is maybe try and do a mirror match. So what I mean by that is, if they've got core infantry units, you have core infantry units. If they've got a vehicle, you have a vehicle. That kind of helps balance things out. What we played is, one person had all these named characters and I just had regular units, and yeah, it was not very well balanced. But that kind of ties into tip number 5, which is don't expect it to be balanced. Like if it's your first game and you're not playing, 1,000 or 2,000 points, there's just throw the idea of balance out the window. Depending on the number of objectives that you're playing and the number of units you have, and just the game isn't designed for balance at that small scale. So rather than trying to hold yourself up to this, ideal of a fair and even game, it's just better just to throw that out the window, and it's just like a learning exercise. So with tip number 6, don't be afraid to call it early. So if you're playing your game and you've lost, 90% of your units, you don't have to play it out to the end. I kind of wish that with our first game we just called it about halfway after turn 2 and, just started another one. There's no kind of point finishing it to completion. So far the game's felt kind of snowbally, so that once one team has kind of got a leader and objective, then that kind of just helps them solidify that. And so if you're just learning the rules and you're not really caring too much, there's no point just dragging it out. It just means that the person losing is going to be losing for 3 hours rather than an hour and a half. That kind of connects as well to step number 7, or tip number 7, which is consider the victory points and missions that you're using. You can also play just destruction and just who can kill each other. It's not utilizing all the different mechanisms there are in Warhammer 40k, such as objective control and secondary missions and objective markers. But if you're not playing competitively and you're not playing to win and it's not balanced, then it's okay to just try and destroy the other units. If you are playing with victory points and that, again, that's kind of gonna really favor one army that's maybe more mobile, or one that's good at just sitting on an objective and holding it. How many objective markers there are the objectives sticky or not? There's lots of variables, so I think if you're playing your first game, get away with as many different missions, as many different ways of scoring victory points, and just focus on the core fundamentals of the game first. And then as you become more and more experienced, and as your army gets more and more points, then it's easier to introduce those different concepts. And then hopefully build up to a full proper game. Tip number 8 is take some breaks. So in that 3 hours and 20 minutes, we didn't break once to go get a drink of water or eat some food, so that's definitely not healthy. And in hindsight, I should have been setting an alarm every half an hour to just go have a break, stretch your legs, do something else. So you can get really carried away, or at least I can when you're playing, that it's easy to lose track of time and just to kind of get really involved in what's happening. But if you can kind of take a break and get some fresh air, I think that it will make the whole process a lot more enjoyable. Tip number 9 now is to take notes. So when I was playing, because I was turning it into a video, which I can link up here if you want to take a look, one thing was that I took photos of the battlefield after each phase. And so I was doing that purely for the video, but what I found out is actually afterwards it was really, really helpful to be like, oh, that's right, he moved his army here, or he used this ability. And I was also taking notes about what attacks we used. So after the battle, I was actually able to kind of replay the battle and learn what mistakes I made, which were plenty, and also, what I could have done differently. And there's no way, or at least not with my brain, that I could have kept 3 hours of information in my head. So yeah, something as simple as just taking a, aerial photograph of the battlefield or a notepad and just write down what happens. But I think that will really help improve your gameplay, as well as you can reflect later on it, on the experience, and learn from it. And finally, my tip number 10 for your first game of 10th edition is just remember to have fun. I think I put so much expectation on myself for wanting to play for 6 months that I was like holding myself up into this standard of it's going to be amazing and I'm going to crush it and I'm going to do all this sort of stuff. But it's better if you just let go and just being like, it's a learning exercise, and what can you get out of it, What can you learn about the hobby? And try and don't be upset if it doesn't go your way, because, 50-50 chance that you're not going to win. And then, if it's your first game, it's probably definitely not going to be a win if you're playing someone who's played before. So just remember it's a game. Just remember, this experience is just about getting your, toe in the water and trying it out, and it's not the end of the world if you don't win. Anyway, I'm going to play another game of Warhammer this weekend, so I might come back with some more tips. But let me know in the comments down below if you've got any tips that you'd like to share as a beginner, or what would you have wished that you could have told yourself in the past. And if you can, please like and subscribe to the channel. It really does help it out with the YouTube algorithms. The more people that subscribe, the more people that can see the videos, so it really helps my channel out if you can do that. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.